Chargers Ravens early game Sunday. The current line as of Friday morning, 2.5. Two. Baltimore by 2. Over under is 42. You talked about this before as your favorite game of the weekend. It's kind of hard to argue. I mean, I like them all, really.
Yeah,
I don't like them all.
It's a good slate.
Yeah, there's one I don't like especially. We're going to get to that next. But this game, the Week 16 game, I talked about this with Ryan the other day. So on one hand, you can look and say, well, it was 16-10 and the Chargers had the ball in Baltimore territory late, right? And the fumble turned it. I mean, so maybe it wasn't a 22-10 game. However, Baltimore dominated this game. They ran all over the Chargers. And it was so surprising because the Chargers had been playing so well on both sides of the ball, and then this just happened, and the Ravens kicked their ass. They just did. It was every bit at 22-10, even though the way it got there was a little weird. They crushed them, and part of it, how good are the Ravens, who have won since Lamar Jackson took over? I think they're 6 out of 7, and the only loss was a game at Kansas City where if the Ravens defense had held on a fourth down conversion late in the game, they would have won at Arrowhead. I mean, this team has been really impressive over the last 2 months.
Yeah, you're right, and the fact that they did it in LA on a Saturday, with a day's less preparation, the fact they played so well against the Chargers was really impressive. I think that people still wonder about Lamar Jackson and whether he can be a guy who can bring the Baltimore back from 2 touchdowns down or 3 touchdowns. They still haven't had to be in that situation, which is kind of a testament to their defense and the fact Baltimore kind of jumps out on people a little bit. But so there's still some question marks about Lamar Jackson, whether or not that offense can, like we talk about a lot, if they're down 14-0, if they're down 21-0, can Baltimore come back? And I think that the Chargers are going to have to jump on people. Maybe we'll talk about it in a minute, but the Chargers have to go to Baltimore for a 1 p.m. Eastern time kickoff, which people have said, well, that's really tough to do for a West Coast team, and it is tough to do. But the Chargers this year on East Coast games are 3-0, and they're 2-0 when they start at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Mm-hmm. So the reason they've kind of done that is they've jumped out to big leads. They jumped out to a 21-3 lead on Buffalo in the first 20 minutes of that game. They jumped out to a 21-6 lead on Cleveland at halftime in that game, and they beat Pittsburgh. I think that was later. Mm-hmm. It was a Sunday night game, yeah. And actually they fell behind early in that game, and they had to come back. So the difference in time, or the difference in location, has not been a huge deal this year. And the last time they won a playoff game, San Diego or LA did, was they won in Cincy in 2013, and that was a 1 p.m. game. So I wonder if that thought process, which has certainly been a narrative coming into this game, whether the Chargers can play well on the road at 1 p.m. That's the Chargers have proven that they play well. They can play well when they're in this situation.
Okay. Some injuries to catch up on real quick. Melvin Gordon probably okay. Chargers lost Jatavis Brown, their linebacker. Again, that's another one. Not a huge loss for them. Hunter Henry might play. He's been practicing. It sounds like Anthony Lynn kind of said some things yesterday, like, well, he's really going to have to show me something for the game. That's a little. If he plays it, I wouldn't expect him to be a big factor. You're still going to see more Antonio Gates at tight end. So the Ravens defense, by the way, we can't. Not that we're ignoring them. Just for statistically, second in both points allowed and yards per play against. I mean, they're just about as good as anybody in the league. Them and Bears. Ravens are 6-2 at home, but they're only 3-5 against the spread at home. The Chargers, on the other hand, they've been great on the road, 7-1 both straight up and against the spread. They've been, like you said, they had those early the East Coast games, didn't matter. They went to Pittsburgh, didn't matter. They went to Kansas City, they won. I mean, there's no, at least, no matter how you look at this game, the Chargers being on the road, there's no fear there at all, right?
Yeah, and you look at their playoff history, it's not very, very extensive, but they've never lost a wild card game on the road. I think they've won 3 or 4 in their history. So again, I mean, I think the Ravens are going to win the game. I think they're going to cover the spread. I had it at Ravens -2.5, so I feel pretty good about that. But if you're looking at this narrative of LA can't play on the West Coast or on the East Coast, they've proven that that their history has proven that they can play. So I'm not sure that that's a narrative that people need to be hinging their bets on.
Yeah, and it's the narrative about the Chargers, just shooting themselves in the foot. Seems like the way this season's gone. And I mean, the Baltimore game, that wasn't shooting themselves in the foot. They just lost. A good team came in and beat them. It happens. But I mean, going to Pittsburgh and going to Kansas City and winning those games. I just thought, like, they won 12 out of 14. And they've been impressive in general. But that in particular, I mean, those two games were really just. I was so impressed with them at how they played. And they're like, wow, this is maybe they've finally taken that step forward that we've been waiting for.
Well, it don't need to happen in the playoffs because Phillip Rivers has only been to one conference championship game. He's never been to the Super Bowl before. He's, I think, one of the most underrated quarterbacks of his generation, but he hasn't gotten to that point yet where we can see his talents on the biggest stage of all. And you wonder if LA can finally do it this year, and they don't do themselves any favor by having to go on the road and not being able to be out the Chiefs in the AFC West. And, the Chiefs are sitting back this week just chilling out. They got some home games coming up, and the Chargers, meanwhile, are going to have to struggle and fight on the road. So
yeah,
it's kind of an unfortunate situation for them, but because they are one of the better teams in the AFC. But football can be a cruel game.
All right, so we're on opposite sides of the fence here again. You're going with the Ravens. I got to tell you that my pick of the Chargers, it's a gut, and I can't explain it any better than that. Like, I think this is a good game. I don't think there's a side of this that's obvious as good as the Ravens have been. I mean, the Chargers, like I said, they went to Kansas City and Pittsburgh. I mean, they're not going to be afraid of the Ravens, even though the Ravens kicked the crap out of them a couple of weeks ago. But I mean, I see this game. This is a game that could go either way. And I know Rivers has had, I have this vision in my head of Rivers struggling on the road against an excellent defense. I can't shake that. But I don't know. I got a gut that they're going to pull this one out, that they're going to bounce back after the way they lost to the Ravens a couple of weeks ago and pull this out and move forward. So
yeah, I mean, that's legit. I can see that, but and I'm not sure how much to take it to factor in that Baltimore played so well against them 2 weeks ago. I'm loath to make my prediction based on that game, but there are certainly some trends and some storylines you can look at and say, oh well, they can continue what they did 2 weeks ago. Right. I just think the way Baltimore's played lately and the way we talked about earlier, the way that these teams peak at the end of the year really matters a lot in the playoffs, I think.
Yep. All right. So last question on this game. We talked a bunch about Lamar Jackson. Do you trust him? Do you trust him? He's been playing really well, and not just running. He's been throwing better than people want to give him credit for, I think. And maybe that's just a perception I have, but it's like, oh, he just runs and the throwing's been okay. He's actually been pretty solid. Do you trust him? In playoff game against a good, I mean, it's tight. This is a different environment for him.
Well, it's a home game, so that helps, I think.
Yep.
I don't trust him if the Baltimore falls behind by 3 touchdowns like we talked about. But
right.
I mean, how can you trust him then? Or I don't know if trust is the right word, but it's so unknown. You can't make a definitive statement about, well, he can lead this team from behind because he hasn't really had to do it yet. So I don't know. I mean, I trust him if the Ravens are ahead.
Yeah.
And and it's kind of a nip and tuck game. Yeah, I trust him then, but there are a lot of questions still about him that maybe he's gonna have to answer this in the playoffs this year. So I don't know if the Chargers, like I said, and we talked about before, Chargers have to jump on him early to kind of get those cobwebs out for that early game for them.
Yeah,
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I don't know.
One thing I love about that is what helps Jackson is that you think about a rookie quarterback in a playoff game and you think, well, what's he going to do when not just if he's down by 2 touchdowns, let's say, but what's he going to do on 3rd and 8, and when he has to convert and he has to throw. But the Ravens don't do has to throw on 3rd. Like 3rd and 10, they're like, all right, let's run. They just run all the time. It doesn't matter. Down distance doesn't matter. So that probably helps him and takes him out of situations where he could potentially make mistakes.
Yeah.
So, all right. So Josh is going Ravens. I'm going Chargers. Right now on NFLPickwatch.com, 56% of the experts like the Chargers. 51% of the fans like the Ravens. That's surprising me. I figured more people would be on Baltimore in this one.
More people do. I'm sorry. More people do what?
On the Ravens. But it's early. So.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the Chargers are one of the best teams in the league this year. So it's
yeah.
And Baltimore, for the most part, hasn't. So